Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome, living beneficiaries, to the show for living beneficiaries, the House of Hidalgo show on the Estate Radio Network. Prepare for the most educational 60 minutes on all of radio with your host, Rick Hidalgo. The House of Hidalgo show can be followed on Twitter and Facebook by searching House of Hidalgo. Find the show on the web at www.therockofsalem.org. Sign up for the newsletter, and while you're there, take the 5-question survey to let us know what you think. The Estate Radio Network is part of the Blog Talk Radio family of networks and can be found at www.blogtalkradio.com/South Dakota DP. Join the show now by chat or call 619-639-4605. Don't forget to dial 1 to get in the queue. Here's your host, Rick Hidalgo! Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. This is the House of Hidalgo show with Rick Hidalgo, and you are listening on the Estate Radio Network, which is all across the Blog Talk Network, and you can find us, of course, at therockofsalem.org. But if you'd like, please consider joining our chat room at the bottom of the page at blogtalkradio.com/South Dakota DP. That's like double play. Please join us there. Ask any particular questions that you might have, or you can call us at 619-639-4605. That's 619-639-4605. Tonight is another installment of our continuing series with our good friend Dr. Paul Klebs. I'll bring him on here in just a minute, but I wanted to remind you that he is, of course, a third-generation, we'll just say natural healer in the not all of 3 generations were naturopaths, but it's in the blood. Let's put it that way. He's quite fascinating. If you missed any of our shows, you can go back to the archives, which are available on therockofsalem.org. They're listed by name in chronological order, so feel free to go there and catch up to all the shows in this particular series. The title of the series is the number one reason for dis-ease. We started off with water and went all kinds of directions from there. Tonight, Dr. Klebs promises to have us some very fascinating information. Without any further ado, let me bring him on the show here. Dr. Klebs, are you with us?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate you coming back on. This has been a great series, and a lot of people listening. They find it very fascinating. So I look forward to what you have for us tonight, sir.
Yes, I thought I would cover some of the issues concerning the thyroid and the damage of the thyroid. We're seeing a tremendous increase in stressed thyroids and thyroid cancer and things that are showing up more than ever before. The thyroid seems to be the master computer for your body, especially for your hormones and for your heart. And so if you're going to look at the body as prevention, you need to sometimes look at the symptoms and then go backwards and unwind it. Some of the ways to tell if the thyroid is stressed, of course, is hair loss, eyebrow hair loss. But one of the ways we use to show someone how to test their own thyroid on a throughout the day basis is if they stand up and let their arms hang down and they look to see if their palms are parallel to their hips. The more stressed it seems that the thyroid is, the more the hands will turn almost like what we would call dog paddling, like a dog in the water. When the hands are facing behind instead of facing the palms facing the hips, we know that that's a stressed thyroid. Now, a lot of people will show up in certain types of testing that they have a stressed thyroid, yet the panels that are used usually by Western medicine, until there's nearly a trauma, they don't quite often register. So if we can somehow catch it before it becomes trauma, it'd be much smarter. It'd be kind of like checking the oil before the rod knocks, or at least learning about how to do preventive maintenance on an engine. We need to look at some of the things that are stressing the thyroid. One of the things in the past that I used to see more of than now, that was the real thyroid stressor, was these younger girls and guys too, with devices made out of metal put in their ears, earrings and studs and things like that. Now, where the earrings are normally in the lobe, there's no special meridians there. If you look at up the ear, there's many different organs that are going to be affected, including the thyroid. If there's an antenna inserted in the ear, and if you understand the world of antennas, acupuncture works like antennas, gathering electricity from the atmosphere on certain points in the body, and they can stimulate pain relief. They can even cause the organs to be jump-started. So acupuncture has managed to survive in spite of all the negative press about it, because you're actually putting an antenna of electricity in a certain particular spot. Now, the surface area of an antenna, called acupuncture needle, is very small compared to the surface area of some of these large earrings and things put up the ears. I started to notice years ago, when it was really popular to start to put things in the ears and different parts of the body. The ladies especially would have a terrible time with their metabolism and couldn't get their weight to drop off even if they went on water diets. Until we can get the frequency back to the thyroid of a healthy thyroid, it's hard to get the metabolism to work. Now, the healthy thyroid runs at 7.83 hertz of energy. That's known as a Schumann resonance, and there are devices where you can begin to assist by tuning up the thyroid. If it's a hypo, it'd be like a loose string on a guitar. A hyperthyroid would be like a high pitch beyond where it's supposed to be, and 7.83 would be like tuning up the thyroid. Now, other things that can knock out the thyroid are any of the xenoestrogens. We might have mentioned that in some of the other program, but xenoestrogens are basically anything that's petroleum that's inhaled or put on the body, like perfume or cologne, anything that smells nice to the nose, potpourri, scented candles, the soap aisle of a detergent store, the detergent aisle of a store is dangerous to be around because of all the scented, and you don't want those scents around you all day long. The plug-in things, the things you hang off the mirror in your car to cover up human smells, those are called xenoestrogens, and they're just really torque and put stress on the thyroid. Other things that are really harmful and damaging to the thyroid are like synthetic clothes, any synthetic fiber. If man made it, it will make your body weak. In fact, you can do muscle testing with that, and we used to different demonstrations of that. You do the deltoid press with your arm held out, and have somebody bring a nylon or rayon scarf or something made out of nylon, and just do the pressure against see what their strength is. As you bring it up to their liver, even if they have a cotton shirt on, is the closer you bring that, the weaker they become, until they become just impossible to hold up their arm when you're doing the pulling down on it. It's called the deltoid press. The fluorescent lights, especially the new ones with all the mercury in them, very much affect the thyroid. If you stand all day in a synthetic uniform underneath fluorescent lights, in an environment of all the different smells and the perfumes and the room deodorants, and then on top of that you'd have standing on concrete. It's no wonder people feel really sick when they have to work all day in an environment like that. So the thyroid becomes stressed, and it becomes really tough for especially hypothyroidism for them to lose weight. Other serious offenders, probably the worst possible thing would be fluoride. Fluoride causes, and I'm going to read, normally I just go by off the top of my head, but I'm going to read an article I just found this week on what the fluoride does to damage the thyroid. Some of the symptoms of thyroid damage, fluoride poisoning, include, and I'll read this: weight gain is almost a given, edema, kidney disease, kidney failure, hair loss, depression, aggression, aches and pains, skin problems, bone deformities, including arthritis and spontaneous fractures, sexual erectile dysfunction, memory loss, weakness, fatigue, heart disease, irritability, cancer, digestive disorder, including GERD, which is severe heartburn over and over, as a result of swallowing the fluoride, nausea, vomiting, visual problems, gum disease, high cholesterol, connective tissue damage, brittle teeth, wrinkles, premature aging, dehydration, and long after the whole body has been damaged, we end up with cosmetic fluorosis, which is where the teeth turn brown because the enamel fails on the teeth. Now, the story that we are all given is that by putting a toxic poison on the teeth, we can make the enamel harder. And I actually believe that's probably true, because the body will wall off nasty poisons any way it possibly can. For instance, if the body is extremely traumatized with aluminum, and that's why antiperspirants work, is because if you put the aluminum on the underarm, it closes the pores to keep the aluminum out, and so then you look nice in your polyester suit with no sweat stains, but you're building up a load of toxicity for later. I believe that fluoride does a similar thing on the teeth, and the enamel, trying to keep that from getting into your system, would put up a defense mechanism. If you understand, to talk to any dentist about cavities, cavities are not from the outside, they're from the inside out. Cavity, when they see a little nick on the enamel and they get into it, there's a big cavity underneath it. And that was because of a sugar diet or an acid diet. The body's stealing the calcium from the inside of the bone to deposit it back into the bloodstream to keep you from dying. And we covered that in a previous call about pH and balancing the pH. Now, some of the fluoride you'll be familiar with as the main ingredient of antidepressant. Fluoride was, in fact, one of the antidepressants is 98% fluoride, and the rest of just would be binders and fillers. And that makes the person really docile. A person that's under the influence of fluoride will have a real tough time making decisions or making a stand or having their own initial thoughts to work on. They're very easily manipulated, and there's all types of research about how it was used during the time of Hitler to make everybody docile so nobody would challenge their captors and just march off to the concentration camps. Now, that's part of history, but the sad thing is fluoride is a waste product of the aluminum and fertilizer industry, and if it's used on animals, it causes them to have a high abortion rate. There's many excuses for fluoride as far as the people that try to control everybody here, but using the limp excuse that makes the enamel harder and ingesting such a nasty poison just to have human waste disposals to get rid of the waste product is kind of criminal in my mind. The tube of toothpaste used to say if it's swallowed by a child, you're supposed to call poison control. And they warned us that in an average tube of fluoride toothpaste, there's enough fluoride to kill a 6-year-old. And I can't imagine any excuse for using that. But here's what's worse than just brushing your teeth or drinking fluoridated water. The percentage of intake of fluoride during a bath or a shower is so much higher than just drinking it that you might have a water filter to make your water taste better, but if you don't have a whole house filter system, you're damaging yourself every time you take a shower or a bath. So fluoride, there's lots of research, and you can try to make a poison good for the human, but it just doesn't fit. It never will fit because it starts out as poison. That's part of the thyroid damage we're seeing. But now to go further, we had Chernobyl, we had Fukushima more recently,
yeah.
And now there's the percentage of birth defect babies, especially on the West Coast and Hawaii also, is so alarming that if it was given out to the average media, there'd be really serious concern about that leaking, and it's still leaking as much as it did before, as near as I can study from different reports. But it's bad enough that we have Chernobyl history, Fukushima, and if you look closely here in South Dakota, the Pathfinder, the power plant that in the 60s they fired up for 30 minutes and shut down, not to talk about again, and they secretly moved it out of town with much fanfare just 4 years ago. It set the stage for a lot more thyroid stress and possible thyroid cancer in that part of the country. If that weren't bad enough, some people have a thyroid radiation device in their home called a microwave. And radiated food, whether you bought it radiated or whether it's radiated in your home, the nuclear device should, I don't know what to do with them. I tell people to take them out to the gravel pit and use it for target practice, but then hazmat would probably show up if they knew you're doing it because you're creating a radiation dump ground. If you're in the salvage business, you try to avoid taking microwaves into your scrap business because when the Geiger counters go off at the place where you try to sell it, they reject your whole load, and they dress in hazmat with Geiger counters when they check your load before you sell the scrap. So if there's some concern for it there, why are we not getting them removed from society, just like Russia does and like other countries have outlawed microwaves? They've also outlawed fluoride. All of that wrecks the thyroid. Now, the thyroid takes a while for it to notice, but I believe a lot of the problems we're seeing, especially with the ladies' increase in heart disease, is because of the thyroid stress that they're being inundated in. And probably the worst accumulation in a short period of time of radiation on a female would be the mammogram. It has so many more rads of radiation than they say it's like getting 100 X-rays at one time. So it's in fact, there are some doctors in Canada I was listening to. They say the number one cause for breast cancer is the mammogram. It doesn't make much sense to crush the breast, which is soft tissue, tender tissue, just so you can do an X-ray through and see what it is. When you could get thermography, which uses infrared and is more accurate and actually causes the breast to heal even while the picture's being taken if there is a problem, just the opposite of crushing the breast. The barbarianism, it seems like if we were to find the inventor, it'd have to be male, and we should suggest that, well, maybe he's got testicular cancer, and every year, just for checkup, we should crush those things to see if he might have something wrong with him. I think that would probably cause, if the men had to do it, it'd be the end of the mammogram. Now, I couldn't talk like that if it didn't have a better system, which would be the thermography. one of the things to reverse radiation poisoning is infrared saunas and devices that put out infrared. So it isn't like we're stuck with a problem if we do a little preventative and a little bit of research. But the sad thing is the money trail follows those that keep the disease and the disaster and the trauma happening. There's very little money in an infrared sauna. There's very little profit in a something called a hot house, which is about $900 and some dollars. It's a dome that you put over you, which has been capable in a number of cases where people have used it for 60, 70 hours, and breast cancer had cleaned up. So the radiation, there is a way to go after it, and of course you need iodine to fill the space that the radiation would have if you didn't have iodine. Selenium is very valuable. Salt is gray. You don't want white salt. You want the gray salt. You want salt that has minerals in it. You know, America's so squeaky clean with their white flour, white rice, white salt, white everything. They would have bleached the heck out of everything. Mm-hmm. And then they add back some synthetic idea to sell the inferior product. And I've been known to make up some funny little analogies, but it'd be like in the wintertime, we're going to enhance your life. We're going to take all your clothes, put you out in the snowbank, but we are going to enrich your life with cellophane. And we let you dress up in cellophane, and you're good to go. Now, that'd be like bleached flour. And I hadn't intended to get into this, but I need to let the world know this. When I was a kid, one of my favorite things to do was to sift my mom's flour out of the big bin. And it was just fun, very mechanical. You know, you pull the little lever, and the bottom would turn, and you'd all the caked gluten and worm casings would be caught in that screen, and then you dump those out in the garbage. And you know, it wasn't considered a good homemaker if you're eating a muffin or a pancake and there's a worm casing in it. I was fortunate enough to get a job as a millwright years earlier, working for one of the biggest flour mills in the country. And as a millwright, part of my job was to keep records on the empty containers of the enriched, like cellophane, given back to the bleached, dead product called flour. The product was called bromate, and it's a deadly pesticide that would kill the worms before they got big enough to see with the eye. So they don't have to, you don't have to sift your bag of flour anymore because the worms can't hatch and get big enough for the eyesight. So I had a question: if that's the case, how can you have what they would call stone ground or whole wheat flour? And they took me over to a part where they just did the new fad at the time. This was back in the 80s. The new fad at the time was to have whole wheat instead of white flour. And how come the weevils never showed up? And they had a thing called an entylator where they dropped the flour on this spinning disc, like 5,000 RPMs, and when the flour would hit that disc, it would destroy the inner workings of the yolk of the larva that would have hatched. And so they didn't have to use poison, and they improved the product and left it without bleaching. So we still have some whole wheat here and there. A lot of the whole wheat seems to be just caramel-colored white flour that's been bleached. But the old saying, "Whiter the bread, the quicker you're dead," that's no joke. That's for real, and I can vouch for it because I got to be part of that when I worked for that company. So I've had a lifetime of asking questions. I was raised by a dad that taught his kids it was okay to ask questions. Don't always take everything in the media or everything that you're told as for real, because usually there's an agenda hidden for someone to make extra money off of your foolishness or ignorance. So when it comes to dealing with the human body, I try to find what's behind it. One time I was told that I should talk to this medical doctor up in Canada, and I said, well, what makes him special that I need to spend an out-of-country call? He said, well, he's retired, and he knows some things that he won't get fired for if he shares the information because he's retired. So I called the guy, and he says, "Who are you?" And I said, "Well," I named the person that said I should call him. I said, "I'm a naturopath doctor, and ND to me represents no drugs. I understand MD," and he said he was an MD. I asked him, "Does MD mean more drugs?" Now, he chuckled at that. And then he told me one of the best statements I've ever to understand who I am. He said, "Oh, you NDs are all alike. In med school, we were taught to treat the cobweb. You NDs hunt the spider." So when it comes to speaking of spider, I just got bit by a black widow. That was no experience I'd never had before. That was about 2 weeks ago, and now I have respect for spiders like I never had before. Anyway, we're in the world of natural, and the natural path would be God's path. In other words, you go with nature, and you follow that instead of synthetic and man's perversion. But the natural path, you're constantly listening and observing someone that wants to be well. You have to pay attention to the messengers. You don't kill the messengers. You listen to them. For instance, pain is a messenger. You don't kill pain. You try to figure out what is the source of it. And I'll give you an example of some of the pain that we deal with. Pain, when people have migraines, you need to first check to make sure they're not taking in MSG. Quite often they'll have their favorite restaurant that puts MSG into nearly everything. And that can even be a big buffet like a casino. When you go to a big buffet, if you do want to take a chance playing Russian roulette, I say most restaurants are like playing Russian roulette with one bullet missing. If you want to find out if they have MSG, you will be shocked how they add it to nearly everything because it makes people hungry. It tends to satisfy them to the point where this was a good meal, even though it's dead GMO food to start with, built in a big factory. If they just throw a bunch of monosodium glutamate on it, it has a flavor that hides the fact that it doesn't have a flavor. And so when you find someone who's having migraines on a regular basis, one of the first things you do is they have to start reading labels because nearly everything in the grocery store today has either high fructose corn syrup or MSG added to it to get people to buy that product. And if you can get them to start paying attention, sometimes you can help them pass their migraines. Now, most headaches, in my experience, goes back to the second call we did on the digestion. Most headaches are because the liver has to handle undigested protein because it doesn't have enough hydrochloric acid and enzymes and for the bacteria to turn it into food. And so the liver normally would be trying to filter out poisons and toxins, but it's so overburdened with the undigested protein strands that it can't do anything except throw a message. It's a headache. And a headache really is, if you think about how the Creator put us together, any pain or any so-called dis-ease is just a messenger trying to get your attention to quit doing what you're doing and pay attention and listen. When we have someone with a lot of headaches that's been taking Tylenol, we try to encourage them, to pay attention because the number one cause for hepatitis C, according to Western medicine, is Tylenol. And so if you keep torturing the liver, your body is not going to perform very well at all. In fact, in the rest of the world, they look at the skin to see how the liver is doing. And if you've got skin rash or liver spots or vitiligo or some change in the skin, you can always go back and feel certain that you need to take care of the liver. And the liver has to have bitters to heal. You can't heal the liver without something that'll break down, give the liver assist in breaking down the toxin or the strands of undigested protein. So we say, have you hugged your liver today? Have you taken something bitter? And I think I might have covered that on the second one too. About used to be people would take something bitter before the meal, so the body could start to produce bile from the gallbladder and be ready for the food. And that would be something like parsley. But now parsley is just thrown away because it makes the plate look good, when actually that was designed to be a bitter to start your dinner in a proper manner. And you can go back to the second recording and get some more information on that. When it comes to things like headaches and messengers such as tumors, tumor is a messenger. It's the body's ability to wall off some either parasites or some toxic load until it has enough energy to pay attention and clean house. It's like doing spring cleaning. Everything looks like a mess at first, and the body is busy taking care of all the day-to-day messes, and it will take enough energy to wall off a tumor and put a sac around it. I can give you one case that was pretty interesting years and years ago. I was counseling over the phone with a lady out of Canada through another professional, and she had a large tumor on the lung, and we gave her the best we had over the phone, what she could get at, the health food store and some health different things. And we get a call one night that the tumor had grown, and I thought, how could it? She's been following the protocol. How could it? Well, she was scheduled for surgery, and under socialized medicine, that's pretty easy to do. You don't have to worry about it if you got enough money, so they just do it anyway. And when the doctor got into there, he picked out an empty sac. Now, what had happened is they had scared her that it was growing, and what had happened was when the tumor lost its volume, the outer circumference got larger because the sac laid down. And that surgeon just picked the little dead sac out, and there was no attachments, no growth connected to it, and threw it away. And so we were thankful that she had the surgery so that she could rest assured that the tumor was gone and that she had learned how not to grow more of them. I'm not suggesting that every tumor that will work on it, but it sure doesn't hurt to try, because the body is smart enough to wall it off. Just give the body some nutrition, and not today. There's many more things available for tumor shrinkage. I think that there would be a lot of tumors that will probably keep the original sac. I ran into another case. It wasn't one of my clients, but where the sac had actually, half of it had just been nibbled away by something in the brain. It was a brain tumor. And the nutrition, when they did another scan, the sac was only half there, so they didn't panic. They left it alone. It wasn't causing any symptoms. But your symptoms, your pain, your messenger, be sure you pay attention to the messenger. Why is it growing? Why is it doing this? Why is it that? Just like you would if you thought your body was worth as much as a lawnmower. Did you know that if you buy a lawnmower from the hardware store, even if it's a little cheap push lawnmower, they will teach you where the oil, how to check the oil, make sure there's oil in it, and just basic maintenance. But when do you get that teaching or training? When you go to see the most clinics, they don't even talk about the spider. They're only to say, "Oh, you've got a cobweb. Let's cut it out. Let's burn it out. Let's irradiate it. Let's do." In other words, they're killing the messenger. And if you look at the body the way God created it, you don't look at one part as if it stands like an island away from the rest of the body. I should probably follow my instinct on that. See, if you have an owie, now that's not a medical term, so I can use it, and you cover it up, or you step on my deer hunting story, and I think I might share this, but I'll do it again. If you've got a deer stand, and it's deer hunting time, and why do they call it a deer stand? I've never seen a deer stand in it yet. I think it's a people stand, but you're crawling up into your people stand so you can shoot that big buck that's coming along, and you get your trigger finger gets a sliver from your wooden ladder as you're climbing up into it, and you're sitting there thinking, Man, if that buck comes along, I'm probably going to flinch because of the sliver. I better get that sliver out. So you dig at it, and then come out. And the sun's starting to come up. You crawl down in a hurry because you think you got a tweezer in the pickup glove box. You're tripping across in a hurry across the field to get to your pickup. And there's a board with a nail sticking up, and you step on it and it goes through your shoe and into your foot. Now you're going in a circle saying, "Shucky darn, shucky darn, shucky darn." Do you remember the sliver? No. You don't even remember what you're doing in the middle of the field. In fact, you see the pickup in one of those circles you're making as you're jumping up and down. You hobble over to the pickup, you crawl through the fence, and you forgot to take the safety off your gun. You shoot the toe off the other foot. Now, do you remember the nail sticking through your shoe? I don't think so, because you have an order of priority. The body knows how to take care of itself. It will show more pain with the toe shot off than the sliver or the nail. Let me bring that down to how it fits. You have a headache, a messenger, a sliver. You take Tylenol, and it's like stepping on the nail. You've caused such a more priority to happen in your body's survival mechanism that it doesn't even have energy left to tell you about the sliver. Now, when you shoot the toe off the other foot, that'd be like taking ibuprofen. The Physician's Desk Reference. That's a big book that's real good for pressing flowers and plants if you want to save them. Or it makes the doctor look real smart because it's, in somewhere in his bookcase. Big, thick, wide book, full of side effects, small print. You have to have a magnifying glass. But it's there in case you ever want to pick one up. And I suggest you get one if you ever run across it in a garage sale, because when you start reading the side effects upon side effects and the drugs that are to never be taken together, it's enough to scare the bejeebers out of anybody. But in that PDR, it says, in an older one that I had, it says, never administer ibuprofen for more than a week. It can cause kidney failure. And one time I was driving up a highway, and I saw 3 tractors for sale, and I love old tractors. 2 of them were my favorite kind. I pull into the driveway. The guy comes out of the house, feeble as could be, and I said, "You're selling your tractors. Why?" He says, "I have to find money for kidney dialysis because neighbor's dog had bit him. They put him on ibuprofen, and now he lost his kidneys, and he had to go on kidney dialysis, which the last I checked is over $7,000 to hook up per day. And most people get it 3 times a week. That's over $20,000 for kidney dialysis. But the PDR warns against that. And so if you've got a messenger, don't kill it. Don't cover it up. And if I've got space, I'll cover a little bit about steroids. Is there time here, Rick?
Yeah, you still got 20, 21, 22 minutes. Yeah.
Okay. Let me tell you how steroids duct tape the body. A steroid, basically, if you're an athlete and you take steroids, it makes it so that the brain doesn't get the message that you're lifting too much, you're pushing too many reps, or you're going to damage your muscle or break a bone. Well, the brain has an automatic built-in mechanism to tell you that this is all your body can handle. When you take a steroid, it's like putting the brain in the closet, and you're walking around here with your head stuck in the closet back somewhere else. So, for instance, when someone has psoriasis, which quite often is worms coming out of the skin, then worms tickle when they crawl out looking for air. In case you don't have psoriasis, let me just assure you it tickles. That tickle, you scratch. You can keep scratching and scratching. So you go to get help from the local clinic, and they will give you a steroid cream that you put on the worm tickling so that there's no, the brain doesn't feel the tickle, and of course you can survive with the worms and they just keep on growing. In fact, if you ever want to check to see if it's worms, it's not too tough. You take Scotch tape, turn it inside out, nick a scab on the psoriasis, touch that scab, and look at what you just pulled out of the skin underneath the microscope, and it'll look like a ball of yarn. It'll be a bunch of little bitty wiry worms. And that's real exciting for people to hear. I'm sure that on the talk show. But anyway, now when you have fungus in the lungs, and mostly because we're eating such a high wheat diet, we have everything glued up, including the colon and the lungs to boot. And the brain says we need air. The lungs are trying to open up and take air. And in fact, it becomes almost like a claustrophobic or a panic, especially if you're asthmatic, you understand. So when you take a puffer, that's a steroid that tells the, hey, brain, you don't need to give us that message. We're just fine down here. Leave us alone, and sure enough, you can stop an asthma attack. The sad thing is most of the propellants that push that steroid into your lungs have the potential to make the problem worse. Now, if you want to totally put the head in the closet, they've got what we call a mother of all steroids called prednisone, and it makes the doctor look smart for a while because you don't feel anything for a bit. The trouble with it is the kidneys do wish they could have an occasional conversation with the brain and know what they're supposed to do. That's why you'll see people sometimes gain 100 to 200 pounds of fluid just from prednisone, because the kidneys do not get the message anymore of what they're supposed to do. So it's a dangerous way to cover up the messenger, and it frustrates me that none of this is taught in med school or taught in health class in high school or college. It seems crazy that a country boy has to figure this out by observation when we should have been told at a young age. So you don't kill the messenger. You pay attention and listen to the messenger.
You know, Dr. Klebs, what you were just talking about there sounded a lot like Morgellons.
Well, I just got some more information on Morgellons this week, and I'm still just pondering this because I've looked at the different times when I had wires coming out of my skin, which is what Morgellons is like. They're really fine, and they don't have a bulb on them like a root. You know, if you pull out an ingrown hair, it's got a bulb on it usually. And
right.
These little wires that you pull out, if you look at them underneath the microscope, they're extruded from some kind of man-made nanotechnology extrusion device.
Right.
And I always thought it was because of the chemtrails that they're, you pick them up when you mow the lawn or whatever. But what I just read this week, there's a direct connection and correlation of Morgellons to GMO corn. And so that one's got me doing some research because I'm trying to get the understanding. We got more serious about not eating any chips like Doritos and stuff like that.
Yes.
And I haven't had any more of those wires coming out of my skin, and I just realized that it's been almost 2 years, and that almost correlates directly to when we quit buying some of the so-called safe chips. It's getting tough to find anybody's product out there. If it's already made to eat and it's not raw, usually it's perverted.
Yes. Yeah, I was just it was just curious. I was trying to distinguish that from what you were saying, because you were talking about these little, it looked like little worms, little high hairs. It sounded a lot like Morgellons.
Yeah, in fact, some of that could be. The worst case I saw was a guy who works in the wood industry in northern Minnesota, and he's out where he's getting some nicks and scratches, of course, from handling timber, but his whole body was just one sore after another sore after another sore, and we looked it up, and the filaments, the filament that we've gotten in some, we didn't find in him. So I can't speak to that all Morgellons is going to be the same, but it sure gives us something to think about. It's part of trying to figure out how to protect ourselves so we don't, the Bible talks about nothing formed against us shall prosper. Right. I think for lack of knowledge we perish, and so the reason that I've come forward with some of this is that somebody's going to be listening. It's going to enhance their life. It's going to make it so they at least pay attention. We just were talking today to some about chemtrails, and you get that blank stare. What are you talking about? And
yeah,
are we a bunch of pigs that can't look up? I mean, the hog itself can't see above very well because his neck doesn't lift up. Are we like the hog? We never look up in the sky. I remember when I was a kid, we used to have clouds that were puffy. And I see an old John Wayne movie or something, and I see, those are the clouds we had when I was a kid. And people don't even pay attention to the clouds. No, we've been getting, recently, we've been getting what I call God clouds, and sure enough, when we have God clouds 2 days in a row, then we get some rain for the crops. And so I celebrate. The last year, I think we counted 5 days that we had God clouds here, and 3 of the 5 were on the holiday when the people had to quit flying those unmarked airplanes up in the sky.
Right.
You know, it always amazes me. They play tic-tac-toe. Like, if they're hauling commercial, they're going from why are they playing tic-tac-toe? Or one time I saw over St. Cloud, Minnesota. I was traveling and I saw a chemtrail that was a complete U-turn, and I thought, I wonder if that pilot forgot his checkbook back at the terminal and had to go back and get it.
Yeah. I see them. I see a lot here, and I've also had conversations with some locals, and they just, they're just kind of sleeping still. They look up in the sky and they see this puff coming out of the plane. Well, that's just exhaust.
Yeah, really. Yeah. Why does it turn into a haze?
Yeah, exactly. So so that's when you take the moment to educate them a little bit and educate them on the difference between a contrail and a chemtrail, and they wise up a little bit. They kind of perk up and say, well, why are they doing that?
Well, on the internet, there's some tremendous close-up pictures of the poison coming out that are taken from other pilots, not almost the same altitude.
Yes.
I just started looking up. About 10 years ago, I took pictures of not just chemtrails, but where they had aligned themselves, and then they had the HARP where it chopped them into rows. And one thing you can count on, God doesn't grow things in rows. When you see a row of trees or a row of anything, that's a man deal. When you see the clouds chopped into a whole bunch of rows, you know that somebody's going to get some nasty weather or potential for tornadoes or typhoons or earthquakes or whatever. But that's all in the internet. What's interesting, in the 70s, maybe even late 60s, my dad warned me about HARP in Alaska. And there's HARP now on many stations all over the globe that control the weather. So, and I'm not giving away any new information there. It's just that people wonder why it's so much tougher to be well today. Well, they've got so many things formed against them trying to prosper against their body. It's time that we let them have the rest of the information.
Oh,
do I have
Go ahead, sir.
Do I have time? I want to talk about a Band-Aid program.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. In 95, I was introduced to the world of magnets. And the company that I brought the most information to me was a Japanese company, and a very, very good company, very strong quality-built products and things like that. In 1 year, I had reached the platinum level, and I decided from what I saw going on in the whole world of natural health, I needed to move on and not be stuck making a good paycheck with selling magnets. Now, the reason I sold was twofold. I sold my position, but I was watching some of the other high performers in that company, and they're losing their wives or their spouse to cancer or heart disease, diabetes, and all the different things, and they're depending on their magnets to save their life and bring them back to health. Magnetics is actually a very viable, very valuable part of getting the body to heal fast. But to depend on that and not do nutrition or to go out and eat like a normal sick American and think your magnets are going to take care of it does not cover. And so I was tweaked. I took a trip to Japan, and I ran into something that just totally got me curious. In Japan, most of your hospital beds have pulsating electronic magnetics embedded in the bed so that you're in and out in a hurry. Everything is so crowded they can't have you laying in the hospital milking your insurance like they do here. And so we tried to figure out, how do we get back some of that magnetics to the world so we can bring it to the world away from Japan? And so they bought one of the portable devices, and it was kind of like smuggled into the country in the luggage. Boy, you wouldn't get away with it today because they'd be wondering what that electronic device is doing. And so only a few people ever got to have the benefit of the investment that they pooled their resources and bought a portable magnet, electronic magnet, back to this country. A few years later, I was in Canada, and I ran across a guy whose job used to be to work for the Health Ministry of Canada. And he was a medical doctor and also electronic engineer. So he had a lot of clout, a lot of earning potential, and he was an authority on finding fraudulent devices in magazines and ads and things, so that people could be raided and the government would come in and steal all their property and try to incarcerate them. And one of the times when he had a raid on this family that was putting on a pulsating magnetic bed, he read the testimonies, which forever changed him, and he became on the other side to help people get well. And I got to read the ad in the paper because he'd kept it, and it was a pretty common ad that had run for some time. But my interest was totally tweaked because I'd seen it in Japan. Then I saw the ad in Canada, and I thought, how am I ever going to find out about pulsating magnetics? And once you know, you put it out there, the Creator, God comes to your rescue. He you ask and you will receive. And sure enough, I was asked if I would go along with a very, very ill gentleman to Mexico City for treatment. And that's where I met Dr. Sodi Polaris, using pulsating magnetics, and he had reversed everything you could imagine. He had volumes of x-rays before and after that 2 weeks what it would do. That information should somehow get to the world. It's been reserved for the Illuminati, the One World Order people. They get to use it, and of course they feel they've been called by God to control the common herd. If you know anything about that, you know what I mean.
The chattel.
And Sodi Polaris, you can look him up on the internet. He was called to Ronald Reagan's side when he had colon cancer when he was president of the United States. Now, your name isn't Reagan, so they're not coming to your house if you get cancer. But over that weekend, he helped assist somebody else in knowledge of how to reverse the colon cancer. Now, because he's willing to go on these weekend jaunts to take care of dignitaries, they left him alone at his clinic in Mexico City. And I saw an absolute miracle that you could not ever discount if you'd seen it. This guy was really cantankerous because he was on high doses. He was on 65 milligrams of morphine per hour, so he was hard to get along with. His osteoporosis was so severe that when they x-rayed it, you couldn't read the bones. It was just fuzz because the light shone right through. Now, down there, x-rays are no way they're going to be manipulated because it's kind of like a drive-through. You go get your x-ray from a place, and that's all they do. And you sit in a chair, and it's like waiting your turn. Doesn't matter who you are, who your doctor is, or anything. And so I saw that x-ray, and I thought, oh, boy, if this guy had fallen over, he would be Humpty Dumpty. How would you ever put him back together again? Because his whole body, trying to protect the blood from all the chemicals he had put in it, had been administered to him, which are very acidic. The blood had pulled almost all the bone out of the calcium out of the bone so it could protect itself. And he was one hurting unit. Now, they never actually identified what was his problem. When the guy was 18, he had a car accident, and his back hurt forever, so he's taking medications for painkillers. But he didn't believe in ever having chiropractic. So basically, after 6 exploratory surgeries, they had milked his insurance for over $1 million. I entered into the picture on a ride to go with him to Mexico City. What a blessing. My. So he got there on a Tuesday. He was supposed to be there on a Monday, but they held a place for him. And that was his way of controlling the doctor. The doctor said, if you're not here on Monday, your spot goes to somebody else. Well, somehow he got lucky, and he's still there. So Tuesday through Friday, he was treated. Now, on Friday, the doctor said, I'm going to Germany, and he's taking care of some dignitary in Germany for the weekend. And this cantankerous client I was with I said, well, then I'm going home too. The doctor said, well, suit yourself because you're supposed to be there for 2 weeks. That's all it takes with his system. And so we went back to the, he said, before you leave, suit yourself, but before you leave, you go get another x-ray. He said, well, I just had an x-ray. That was 4 days ago. We went down there and got another x-ray. And that was when I saw with my own eyes something that just totally just blessed. Oh, if the world could have this information. What happened was with pulsating magnetics and 3 ingredients, in 4 days, he had filled the bones back up. Now here they say there's no hope, no cure for osteoporosis. You just have to take Fosamax or something and we can maybe slow it down. If you go outside of the country, 4 days to complete the worst case I'd ever seen of bone density loss ever. And 4 days later, you could take a sharp pencil and see all the vertebrae and the ribs. And the porosity of the pelvic bones were still enough that some of the light shone through, but that was the only fuzzy area of the whole thing. And the main ingredient was pulsating magnetics. Now, if you understand the Krebs cycle, the blood cell is a plus and minus, and there's 2 sides to a magnet. And so every time a pulsating magnetic is going, it's giving both sides of the Krebs cycle an improved strength and giving it the healing potential that it's looking for, especially if you have nutrition in the body to work with. And I was given the recipe, and it's so simple that almost nobody would believe it anyway. I was just dumbfounded when I saw the before and after that x-ray. And then the doctor figured out that I wasn't just a tag-along relative, that I was taking notes and taking a keen interest in all of this. He showed me page after page after page of x-rays. I saw triple-sized hearts shrunk to normal in 2 weeks with pulsating magnetics and his concoction. I saw fist-sized aneurysms shrunk to normal in 2 weeks. We had, when we were there was a kid that had a severe accident. He was almost comatose. They brought him in, put him on the magnetics. Uncle and his dad carried him in. He's a 16-year-old kid. And he'd been there a week when we got there. And by the end of that week, he was able to walk and talk. He was still a little slow in his speech, but he was able to hold his bowels, and he was no longer incontinent and all that. And it was just from the pulsating magnetics. He showed me a case of syphilis that was so bad you couldn't hardly recognize what body part it was. And in 2 weeks, how it had cleaned that up also. He showed bones broken, mended. It was like volumes. And he just showed me a few from one book. And I do regret, he asked me if I would move to Mexico City and he was going to teach me. He had one lady already trained, but he was in his 90s, and he's all excited about building a new hospital in Monterey. Now, I don't know what I'm going to be doing when I'm 96 years old, but I hope I'm still excited about life and causing other people to have life. And this guy was, you can read a lot about him on the internet. It's Sodi Polaris, I think it's P-L-A-R-A-Z, so Dr. Sodi Polaris. I'm sure he's passed on by now. I didn't keep in contact. The reason I turned it down is a lame excuse. You know, I had teenagers, a single parent, raising them alone, and I didn't want to try to pull them away from their friends, and you have to learn Spanish and all that. But I was given an opportunity that I turned down, but the best I can do now is share the good news, and so maybe somebody else can pick it up or be curious about it. If you look at what the cells are made out of, you can figure out how to do it. And pulsating magnetics is profound. Now, static magnets work too. They cause an increase of blood flow to the area. How are you going to heal anything unless you get blood to the area? And the blood needs to be healthy. So magnetics are real. Magnetics are important. It's a very good Band-Aid. It's a good way to accelerate healing. But I sold my business to build a portable pulsating magnet that's like a little wand that you hold. And we've had everything from cataracts and all the eye things improved to people that hadn't smoked for 2 years with dementia start talking like they never missed a day. We've used it for all kinds of sports injuries, broken bones heal in a hurry, stuff like that. But I love magnetics. In fact, as soon as we figured out I had a black widow spider bite, we taped a business card magnet over the bite to help neutralize the acid. It's the most toxic venom in North America, the black widow. It's more than even a rattlesnake. The rattlesnake has less toxicity to it, but you get more volume, so that's why it hurts so bad to get a bite from a snake. But the black widow turns out from the research I did this last couple of weeks, is the most venomous. And years ago, I saw a guy that was suffering from brown recluse bite, and the flesh was getting a big round circle and proud. And we taped a magnet on that thing, and 2 days later, it's starting to turn back to healing. So,
wow,
I love my magnets, and the people can poo-poo them all they want, but yeah, they'll suffer then.
Oh, this is just amazing stuff. We'll have to go further into that magnetic stuff on a different show. I thank you again for being on. We're just a couple minutes into overtime here, but I couldn't stop because it was too fascinating. This is just crazy good stuff. Now I'm hoping that before long we'll see some of these technologies come forth as these corporations begin to be dismantled and truth begins to come forth. That's all of our hope anyway. So.
Well, I see good signs all over. I see more and more people buying organic, and they're starting to get more spots in the stores. I'm excited about the future because I think people are figuring that there's something rotten in Denmark, so to speak. There's something rotten in America, and we need to bring in some fresh.
Yes, 10-4. So again, I thank you, Dr. Klebs, for coming on. I'll give you an opportunity to say your tagline.
Ignore your health; it'll go away.
I love that. So for Dr. Klebs, this is Rick Hidalgo. This has been another episode of the House of Hidalgo Show. We thank you so much for attending. Have a good evening, good night all, and stay safe. God bless.